Okay, so thank you for asking me to come and talk to everybody today. I'm actually based in, I run Aquatic Epps, but I'm based now at Linden Hydrotherapy and Physiotherapy in Reigate in Surrey. I had the joy of being able to design that pool. It was a rundown pub that we purchased at auction with some investors. And I'm delighted to say that we eventually, after about a year, got planning permission. And we now have an amazing hydrotherapy, fully accessible pool. So I spend an awful lot of time there. We see people of all ages, all different neurological complaints, as well as some musculoskeletal as well. I'm an accredited tutor for the Aquatic Therapy Association of Chartered Physiotherapists. And so I've been very involved in doing things such as helping to get pools open during the pandemic and helping the government to recognise that the pools we wanted to open weren't swimming pools, that they were for therapeutic benefit, and that they were pools that would be very safe compared to your crowded swimming pools. And we worked together as part of the ATACP to try and set guidelines and standards for good practice for other physiotherapists, and also to set up training for those that are new to the field, so that hopefully when people do come along and receive hydrotherapy services, they're getting it from people who aren't just physiotherapists, but have undertaken appropriate training after they've finished their degrees. So I've also undertaken some research. My master's degree was looking at exercise physiology in cerebral palsy, and my PhD was looking at outcome measurements for people who were receiving aquatic physiotherapy. And I'm also a medico-legal expert as well. So that's kind of me in a bit of a nutshell and who I am. So I've been asked today to talk about the benefits of hydrotherapy. And from my perspective, I think there are benefits that are broken down into a few areas. One of those areas is, because it's heated water, are the effects of being immersed and actually being in heated water itself. And there are differences to if you're in a bath or if you're upright in heated water. Then there's what actually happens when either you move or somebody moves you, or you're supporting someone if you're a carer or a family member to move in water, and what the benefits of those are. Then there's the generic benefits of exercise, but again, how they are different in water, actual aquatic physiotherapy itself, and rehabilitation. So my focus is going to be more on the first three, with just a little bit on the last two, so that it's clear how the last two benefit because of the environment that we're in. So to talk a little bit about what happens with heated water, the first thing is we have this pressure. It's called hydrostatic pressure, but it's pressure that's around the whole of your body when you're stood up in water, or if someone's supporting you upright in water. And what happens with this pressure is it's higher down by your ankles and your feet than it is up by your chest. So it acts a little bit as if somebody was squeezing your ankles. So it pushes the fluid back up. And so what we get is we get a reduction in swelling. So some people may come to the pool. You may have very swollen ankles, particularly if you're not as mobile as maybe you used to be. You may have poor coloration of your ankles and feet. They might look quite dark as well. And once you get into the pool, you might see that straight away, almost immediately, the colour improves in your ankles and feet. And it goes from this darkened colour to a nice pink colour. And also that when you get out of the pool, although it does come back, some of the swelling that you have around the ankles, in particular around the calves, is less. So you're able to move more in the water because that's not restricting you. The other things that happen because of the pressure and the heat are that your blood circulates around your body more, which means that, again, it's easier to move. And if you suffer with muscle spasticity, or someone you support suffers with that, it means that they're getting better blood flow and better oxygenation to their muscles, which helps to reduce that spasticity and that tightness. Now, the other things that sometimes people don't know about are the effects that happen to your heart. So again, because of this pressure, because this is sort of squeezing everything back up your body, the same thing happens with your blood. So your blood gets pushed back up into your heart, and there's lots of research to show this, so that your heart gets more blood into it, a little bit as it would if you were exercising. And this puts a stretch around the heart, which causes it to send impulses off to the brain, which I'll talk about in a minute. The other thing that happens because of this pressure is you've got a greater awareness of your skin and of your movement, because you've got the pressure against the skin. So if anyone ever wears, or anybody you support wears a lycra suit, or has ever worn any of the DMOs or the second skins, where it's almost like a second skin around your body, it has that same effect. So it also makes you a bit more aware of where your joints are in space, which can be something that can be quite difficult in terms of having had a brain injury, in that sometimes things like where you put your foot, where you reach for something, might not be where you feel that it's actually going to go and end up. And in the water, it just gives you a little bit more time to feel what's happening to your body part as you're moving it. So it gives you a little bit more time to be aware and also to respond to that. So this pressure also helps to slow all your movements down, which also gives you a better time to respond. So if balance is an issue, again, if you fall in the water, it's much, much slower than if you were to fall taking steps out of the water. So what happens is the blood fills the heart. It therefore has to push it, the body has to push it back to where it was before, and to make sure the heart goes back to how it was before. So we get a strong contraction of the heart, and we get our blood going out to our muscles and everywhere else. So that's a little bit like an exercise effect, even before you do anything. So for people who find it difficult to move, but might be able to undertake some movements in the water, it's also having an effect on your body systems in the same way as it would if you were able to exercise out of the water to the same degree. So it's a really good place just for general exercise and movement, particularly again if it's heated, because these effects that happen are all happen greater the warmer the water. So you don't get such a good effect if, for example, the water was 20, 28, 29, which is your typical swimming pool temperature, compared to if you're in a teaching pool, which is usually around about 30, 31, or compared to being in a hydrotherapy pool, which is usually 33 to 34. So because of what happens to the heart, it gets stretched, and it kind of tells the brain, I'm in a bit of a state of stress, because that doesn't normally happen. So the way that the brain responds and our nervous system responds is a thing called our fright and flight system. And so what it does is it wants to calm the body down. So it dampens that system down. And the causes of that then are that you end up feeling more relaxed. And anyone that's been in a hydro pool may feel that sometimes you get out and you feel quite tired, and you might think you feel a bit tired because you've been more active, or you've maybe been working hard with a physiotherapist, but some of that will also be because of this effect, which again is where the temperature is quite important. So it gives you a sort of calming effect, a more relaxed effect. If you've got muscle spasticity and tension in your muscles or stiffness, it helps to reduce that and calm it. And if you have pain, again, because everything's calm and relaxed, it helps to ease that pain, particularly if that pain is related to taking weight through parts of your body or postures that your body adopts that you don't want it to, sometimes that puts strain through it. And then because you're more relaxed, it then makes it easier for you to move, or if someone's supporting you, to be moved. The other thing that happens in the nervous system is that because we've got this heating effect on the whole of our body that's in the water, it increases our blood flow and it increases our metabolism. and it sends messages to our spinal cord in our spine that has an effect on some of the nerve endings, and that also causes relaxation as well. So there's two reasons that your muscles get more relaxed when you're in heated water. One of the reasons is because of the effect on the heart, and the other reason is the effect of heating on the skin. Now, the other things that happen to your body, partly because of the pressure that I was talking about, and also because of the other effects that occur, is that we get release of something called endorphins, which are our good, feel happy releases. They are, again, temperature dependent. So the warmer the water, the greater that release is. And they, again, help with mental health. They help with relaxation. They help with feeling calm. They also are really good in terms of helping to reduce pain. So that's a very positive effect that occurs even if you're not doing anything when you get in the pool, but just by being in the pool, even if you're being floated or standing, or if you're able to walk across by yourself, even if you can't do that out of the pool, you're going to get these effects happening just by being there. And then we also get endorphin release when we exercise. So again, if you can exercise in the water, but you can't out of the water, or not to the same amount, because it's really difficult to lift your limbs, to move your body against the natural effects of gravity, whereas that gets reduced when you're in the water, then that can also lead to further releases of these endorphins into your body. So these are all really positive effects, even if you're not doing any therapy once you're in the pool. I sometimes have people come into me asking if they've had a catastrophic injury and they've maybe got a breathing tube, or maybe they struggle with their breathing. They might not have a safe swallow. It might not be safe to have water in their mouth, and whether they can come in the pool. And one of the things that is helpful for some people that have a lot of difficulties with their secretions, with sputum, with cough, that causes them discomfort or causes some problems with their health, is the humidity. So that helps to make it easier to cough and to release anything that's on the chest. But also, again, this pressure against the body helps you to take a deeper breath. So sometimes we have people who come in the pool who find it easier with their speech and will talk more, will make more vocalizations and sounds if they're quite severely affected, compared to out of the water, because this pressure is helping them to take a deep breath. And I would say as well, I don't know who everybody here, those who support others, if you do have people who have breathing tubes in, but it shouldn't be a reason for not using the pool, as long as obviously a proper risk assessment is undertaken and it's felt that it would be beneficial. So I just wanted to bring that up, because I know sometimes people are told that you can't if you've got a breathing tube. You just need to have the right pool and the right expertise of people helping you. And of course, if you can move more in the water and exercise more in the water, that will further help in terms of keeping the chest clear and helps with your breathing control and your swallow. And so one of the things we'll often work on, particularly if we're hoping somebody's going to be able to go back to swimming or being independent in water, is to work on their breath control when they're in the water, the same as you would if you were taking swimming lessons. So in summary, there are lots of different parts of the body that are affected just by being in heated water before you even undertake any type of therapy in the pool itself. And I think it's important to know that, because you might be able to get access to a warm pool, but you might not be able to get access to physiotherapy, or it might be too expensive. So it is good to know there are benefits if that's something that you're able to find in your local areas. Okay, so I'm now going to talk about what I call the properties of water and what makes it different for moving, exercising and support. So one of the key things is buoyancy, which is the support upwards from the water. That means that we don't need as much effort and that we can just let ourselves, particularly if we use floats, lie in the water and we don't have to keep ourselves up against gravity. And what we know is that if you stand in water and you only have your head out of the water, so it's quite deep, that you'll only take about 15% of the whole of your body weight through your feet. So if you're not able to stand out of the water, or if the only way you can stand is use a standing frame, or you need to use a stand transfer aid, or you need people to support you to stand, sometimes you might be able to do it on your own in the water without anyone supporting you. And that's a skill that you might be working towards out of the pool as well, depending on what stage you are from injury. One of the really important things as well, and particularly as we age, is that means we're not taking as much weight through our joints and through our body system. So if you've got a posture that means that you do get some pain, maybe it might be at ankle, it might be at your hip, it might be in your back, and stiffness, that should be reduced when you're in the water, because you've not got as much pressure going through your joints and through your body systems, which again can make it easier to move, but again can also help to ease any pain. And this upward force we've got off the water, and I will show just a short video clip in a minute, means that it's easier to move towards the surface of the water and more difficult to move away from the surface of the water. So we can use this property of water to help us with movement. So I might not be able to lift my arm up on my own when I'm out of the water because of gravity, but I get into the water and I can do that movement. So I'm giving information to my brain all the time as to how I do that movement, because out of the water, somebody has to do it for me, as an example. You may find that you can stand up from sitting down, and out of the water, you might need to pull on something, or you might need someone to help you, or you might do it, but you're shifting all your weight onto one leg. So one leg's always being overworked and you're putting strain through the other. Whereas in the water, because you've got this upward force, as soon as you start to lean forwards, and anyone that's done this in the water will know, you almost feel as though your bottom's going to lift straight away. So again, it gives you that sensation of how to do the movement without somebody doing it for you. And again, without any risk to your joints and to your muscles and tissues that would happen if you do it and you don't quite do it in a straight movement. It can also be used as a way of strengthening and a way of really working the muscles. So instead of using it to help you, you can use it to work against it and work against this upward force that you're experiencing. And then you can make it even harder for strengthening, and you can do things like add floats on. So it's a little bit the same as if you were using weights out of the water, but again, without all that strain on the joints. And you might be able to do the exercise in a position that would be too difficult out of the water. So, for example, if out of the water, it's really hard to stand and balance, it might be quite hard to do strengthening work of your arms, for example, because you're working so hard on your balance. Whereas you come into the water, because you're much better balanced because of the support, you can then use those floats to work against and really strengthen your arms in a way that you can't do out of the water and without any risk of injury. So as I said before, there may be certain things that you can do in the pool because of this support that you actually can't physically do out of the pool, or you might be going through stages of rehabilitation whereby you're working towards some of these things out of the water, and by undertaking them in the water, it helps you get to that end goal quicker. So I'm really hoping these will work. I've tried them lots of times. So for instance, this is demonstrating out of the water, you might not be able to stretch your calf out when you're standing up. You might only be able to do it if you're sitting with your legs outstretched, whereas this is giving you the opportunity to be able to do it in a different position without the weight going down through your ankles and feet, or any risk of you turning your ankles, which again can be an issue out of the water, particularly if you would normally wear splints. And then, as I was saying before about standing up, just by starting to lean forward, so as she takes the barbell forwards, that upward support of the water helps to bring her up very easily into a standing position. And you can see that that's actually really quite effortless for someone to come up to standing. And although I have used one of my staff, we get feedback all the time when we're looking at what people's goals are. So things like being able to stand from sitting is often one of the goals we're working on out of the water, and we often achieve it in the pool a long time before we achieve it out of the water. But again, it's telling your brain how to do it again, what movements to go through. Now, the other property, there's quite a few properties of water, but one of the others is called turbulence. And if you think about a duck swimming through the water, when it's got its little baby ducklings, initially they're right close behind the mother duck. And that's because they're being pulled along by what's called a turbulent drag. And it's a sort of almost like a suction effect. So that, and if you get in a pool, just move your arm through the water or your leg. And what you'll feel is, it's as if the water's trying to bring your arm back to where it started or your leg back to where it started. So what's called turbulence does is it slows your movement down. So if you walk through water, you'll have this movement of water trying to pull you back to where you started from, almost backward stepping. And at the same time, you've again got that pressure of the water in front. So what it does is it slows everything down. So as you move your arm, as you move your leg, it doesn't move as quickly as it would out of the water. And you can also use this effect to cause a stretch on muscles and again to help reduce any spasticity within muscles. And we see quite a lot of people who have quite strong dystonia, quite a lot of rigidity within their muscles. And it can take a really long time to mobilize out of the water to help reduce that. Whereas you can get into the water, you can use this effect of the water and move in the body parts at different speeds. And it really helps to get a stretch, which then helps to reduce that spasticity, which then means it's easier to move. Or if you've got very severe body changes, it can help to reduce that spasticity so that it's more comfortable for day-to-day activities, dressing, personal care, and so forth. Also, because you've got this water moving on your body rather than when you're just standing, it gives you greater, again, sensory input, greater information about your body that goes up to the brain as to how you do things, how you move, how you balance. And again, it can be used to assist or to resist movements. So yesterday I was working with somebody who finds it really hard when he takes a step and one side's affected a lot more than the other to bring his hip forward. So his hip tends to push back and his knee pushes back. And then he ends up on his toes, which makes him quite unsafe walking. But also it means that it's really hard for him to balance. And he suffers with knee pain partly because of the way that he walks. And by creating some of this movement of water, I do that just in front of where his hips are, and it helps to bring his hips forwards so that he then doesn't get his knee flicking backwards and doesn't go so far onto his toes. And he's relearning a different way to walk, and we're using the water to do that because it's not something he's ever done before. And we're starting to see it, or he's reporting to me, he's feeling a change in his walking when he's out of the pool as well now. So you can use it to assist your movements, and then you can use it to resist movements. And sometimes, again, if, say, somebody has had a brain injury that's resulted in almost like a stroke hemiplegia, you might put a flipper on your side that isn't so affected or isn't affected, and move that flipper backwards and forwards when you're standing, either holding onto a rail or holding onto some paddles. And when you do that, the foot that's got the flipper on is going to cause this turbulent and movement of water around your affected side, which will make you take more weight on it and which will make you balance a little bit more on it, again, in a safe environment. So sometimes you'll use that turbulent drag and movement of water for lots of different things, for balance, for stability, for movement, for strengthening, and there's a whole range of different ways you can use it. And as I described with the gentleman who I was helping to walk yesterday, that was to help him with his functional abilities and his walking. And when you saw my colleague coming up to stand off the platform before, again, I could, if I wanted to, create some movement of water in front of her hips if she was struggling to start the movement by herself. Hopefully I've got these in the right order. So this is just cycling legs in the water, just using the flippers, just to demonstrate. You can see the movement of the water as the flipper goes down and then as it comes up. And that's that drag effect that I'm talking about here. You've got that movement of the water that's happening, which is resisting her movements. So when she's doing those movements at the moment, as she goes to bring her foot up, she's got to pull it up against this flipper. She's also got to pull it up against the weight of the water, and she's got to pull it up against the movement of the water. So all of those things are working the muscles at the front of her shin, the muscles that help to bring the foot up towards the ceiling. And then on this one, it's just a demonstration just of her walking. So hopefully what you can see is the water breaking up behind her when she walks forwards. And then as she walks backwards, you can hopefully see in front of her, now there's more water breaking up in front and less at the back compared to when she walked forwards. And that's what we mean when we talk about this turbulent drag. So there's the movement of the water behind. And then when she comes backwards, you should see the movement of the water in front of her. And the water should seem a lot stiller. You can see the tiles at the bottom when she walks backwards, because you haven't got all that movement of water. And walking backwards is actually really quite nice, even if you need to be assisted to do so, because it works those big muscles that we use for walking and for standing. And she obviously needs a bit of physio. I did tell her because she was veering off to the side. She said that she pulled her hamstrings. That was her excuse. Okay. Now, the other thing that happens in the water is, for ease, I'll call it a rotational effect. But what happens is if you take a bit of your body out of the water, then gravity has an effect on that, trying to pull it back down, and will cause you to roll. So as you can see here, each time she lifts her arm up, she almost rolls onto her side. So again, we can use this effect in the water for people who maybe are finding it difficult. I wouldn't do it exactly like that, but this is showing the principle. But if you had someone that, say, was finding it difficult to roll over, or for somebody who's finding it difficult to move between different positions, but this is just the easiest way to visually see it. And what you can also do is if you are, oh, sorry, that's the same one. Hopefully this is a different one. Yeah. And then you saw how much she rolled if she didn't stop herself. So now what she's doing is she's trying to stop herself. And we do this standing and sitting and kneeling. It's not just lying in the water. So she's having to work her tummy muscles. She's working her legs, her hips, pushing them out against that ring, which again is the big hip muscles, to try and keep herself stable and not roll over. She'll be working the muscles around her back and also around her hips and her tummy. So some of the activities you can do in the water, and if you couldn't physically do this yourself, someone could be doing it with you hand over hand, and you can still be working on those same effects. So another nice thing in the water is that you can work lots and lots of different things at the same time. So I will sometimes have somebody in the pool for half an hour, and in order to work all the different things we wanted to work on to achieve that person's goals, it would take us 2 hours out of the pool. It wouldn't be realistic, and they would fatigue and they'd tire too quickly, and it wouldn't be a reasonable thing to do. Whereas in the pool, you might be able to do that, and quite often can. And these are using the same principles as well. So even here, as she's stepping up sideways onto the step, she's changing the amount of her body that's in and out of the water. So as she brings her other leg up onto the step, this rotational effect is actually occurring sideways. So it's helping her to bring her weight over the leg that was initially on the step, the right leg. And again, all these things that I'm showing are being done sort of free, with no hand support, no rail, no paddles, except for this one, it's got paddles. But when we're working in the pool, we will often either be holding onto a rail or holding onto a dumbbell, or may have somebody supporting you. I'm just using this visually so you can see the descriptions. And then here what she's doing is she's doing a lean forwards, and so it's more difficult as she goes backwards because more of her body is out of the water, and it's easier as she goes forwards as more of her body is in the water. And she's using those, you probably see her arms moving, in that she's using those paddles to help her to balance. And again, if she takes them out to the side, a little bit like when you think about people that learn to swim, children start off doing what they call a starfish float, with their arms and their legs wide apart. And they do that so that more of their body is being supported by the water. So without even saying anything to my colleague, she's automatically taking her arms out to the side as she finds it, she needs to balance a little bit more by using the paddles. And that's the other thing in the water. You will often get a lot of automatic things that happen without you thinking about them. Just aware of time. So a little bit about what's the difference if you're looking at aquatic physiotherapy. Well, the main difference is to if you were just going into a pool or going into the pool with someone who's supporting you, or if you're the person that's supporting, is that in aquatic physiotherapy, you've got your experienced and suitably qualified physiotherapists. They're going to, from a professional point of view, they'll be able to do a baseline assessment. They'll be able to help you look at what outcomes and goals you want to work towards, and they'll be able to work with you to do that, and they'll be able to adapt and modify and change what you're doing in the pool to hopefully achieve your end goal. They're obviously involved with the whole of the multidisciplinary team. They don't work just in isolation, and they know what are the correct and safe techniques for you, and also what's the right equipment for you to use. They can provide individual sessions, they can provide intensive blocks of sessions, or they can provide ongoing rehabilitation. I think for me, one of the key things, having worked in the field for so long, is the sooner, if you've had an injury, the sooner that you are safe and well enough to access the pool, the quicker you're going to experience those movements and positions that you may have lost, that you can't out of the water yet because of gravity, or you're needing to rely on equipment. You know, I'm sure you all know about brain plasticity, so I'm not going to talk in detail about that, but obviously the sooner we can start to learn and remodel and change how our pathways work, the better the outcome we're going to have. That's not to say that if you then don't have input for a number of years, that you won't see any change. And at the moment, I'm working with a gentleman who was told he would never walk again. And he's obviously having land as well as aquatic therapy, but it's been years since he has had the funding to be available to him to be able to have some rehab. And he's now walking with one stick. And how long have I been seeing him? 3 years. When I first started seeing him, he wasn't walking at all. He wasn't even standing. He was being hoisted. So I also say never as well. And I think the other thing is in the early days. Sometimes, as some of you will know, there can be a lot of irritability. It can be quite difficult being in certain positions. One of the gentlemen I take into the pool at the moment, even, he had to have a baclofen pump, so he can't lie on his stomach, and that's the only way we can stop the really, really strong, his joints lock into position and his arms, and it's really painful for him. And we've been able to get him on a roll in the water on his tummy because we don't have the concern of his baclofen pump. And since we've been able to do that, the pain that he was suffering in his shoulders, because he uses eye gaze to tell me, he says has significantly reduced. And so, I know he's fundraising at the moment to try and keep coming, and his carer comes in with him. And it's also that, so it's that irritability and that being able to tolerate movements and positions that in the early days you may not be able to. And also the enjoyment of therapy, because again, in the early days, you're being bombarded, and you've had this traumatic event and you may not even remember it. And suddenly you've got all these therapists coming at you from all directions. And it's the one thing that often, even if you're not doing a huge amount physically, you've got that relaxation, that calm environment, and just helps holistically, I think, with all aspects of brain injury. And if you're going in with family members, or if you're getting in the pool with other adults, it's also about that bonding and contact. And again, I have a lady a similar age to myself, who unfortunately had quite a catastrophic injury. And she comes in the pool, and in the school holidays, her son gets in with her. So she can just about move from one end of the pool to the other if she's got a neck collar on, and she's just got enough movement of her hands to get herself from one side to the other. So her and her son do races, and he's sensitive enough to realise what her abilities are, and he absolutely loves it because it's the only time he sees his mum move, and she absolutely loves it because it's one of the few things they can do together when she's out of her equipment. So I think the pool is fabulous for that as well. Okay. And I'm really aware of time, so the only other things I would like to do is just to really kind of summarise some of the other effects. You can use the pool for helping to maintain healthy weight if you can't exercise out. And I see that all the time with people with a whole range of conditions, not just neurological. The breath control with the pressure of the water, posture, that you can often exercise for longer without those same issues around fatigue. Because again, there's no point coming in the pool and then being absolutely whacked for the rest of the day, because that's no good for your quality of life. Increasing confidence, particularly, if there's the fear and anxiety of falling, or even when seated of falling over, for those that have got changes within their bones as part of their brain injury. And also, as I've said before, muscle spasticity, pain, stiffness. So you can hopefully improve fitness and strength without increasing all of those other things. Improve flexibility, balance and stability. Relearn new skills that aren't yet possible on land. And independence and freedom of movement, no matter what your physical impairments might be, and without that risk of strain or risk to your vulnerable joints. So just a couple of quick ones. This is something that a lot of people have great difficulty with. Isolating the movement of their hip, extending backwards without the hamstrings kicking in and the knee getting involved. And then this is one I've shown because I've got someone who just very recently, their biggest problem was that if they fell, they couldn't get up off the floor unless there was something near them. And when you're out in the community, there's not necessarily always something near them. So we've spent a long, long time just working on them getting up off the floor in the pool, starting off quite deep and then gradually getting a little bit shallower. And then eventually you can just sit in the background doing it off the platform there, and then eventually onto the steps, with the aim of being able to do that out of the water. But again, in terms of confidence, that's a really big thing. I think I've covered everything on that slide. And then I just thought it was worth saying, if you are going to look for a pool to use, some of the, I don't know, I've got a number 2 there. Obviously, I was getting tired by the end of this. The practical considerations, what do you need to think about? Well, obviously, really big things are going to be dependent upon whether you're using a wheelchair or not, whether it's powered, self-propelled, or whether you're walking, is going to be access to the building, to the pool itself, to and from the changing rooms. You know, how easily is there a turning space for a wheelchair? Are you going to get stuck partway through? Are you going to have this wonderful session in the pool, and then when you come out, it's crazy rushed and you lose a lot of the benefit? What's the air temperature like? If the pool temperature is lovely and warm, you've had a really great session, and then you get out of the pool and it's freezing cold and you're shivering, you can put a foul blanket on, they work really well, by the way. You're going to lose a lot of the effects. And also, if you've got a big change in the temperature, that to me usually indicates that pool's not being managed very well, which then makes me worry about other things like the pool water quality and the dehumidification and air systems. So you also want to look at the changing facilities. If you're supporting someone to get changed, does the changing bed go up and down? Has it got sides? If you've got somebody you're supporting who might have unpredictable behaviours, or might have a seizure, or might have unwanted movements. Is it a non-slip floor, particularly if you're going to do stand transfers? Can you bring in your stand transfer aid if you use a Sarah Steady or a Return or a MoLift or one of the others out there? If you need to use a hoist, have they got a hoist? And have they got a hoist that will take you from the changing bed to the pool, from the wheelchair onto the changing bed, and vice versa? Because sometimes people will tell you they've got a hoist, and then when they get there, the hoist is just at the pool. And actually, how do you get from your chair to get changed to get into the pool? Or they have ones where there's one that they sort of pump and it's really jerky, which might be fine for some people, but for some people that causes anxiety and might set off a seizure, for example. So you just need to get as much information as you can, or ask somebody else to help you to get as much information as you can. If you're able to walk up and down steps, what are the steps like? Are they those awful ladder steps, or are they proper steps with a rail into the water? The pool that I designed, we made sure the steps were really shallow, really wide, so people can go down sideways if they need to, and not just forwards and backwards. Do they have a pool chair? If you've got good sitting balance, you don't want to be using a hoist. That's not going to be dignified for you. If you have got good sitting balance, and the steps are just a bit too deep, that is a dignified way of getting into the pool. Check the depth's going to be okay for what you want to do in the water, and are the tiles non-slip? So you might go to a hydrotherapy pool and you might be doing certain activities, or you might be someone that's supporting someone who's had a brain injury in the water, and you might have been in a hydro pool and the tiles were non-slip, so your feet were fine, and then you go into another pool where they're not, and you put that person at risk because your feet slip, or the activity or exercise you want to do, you feel really unsafe because your feet are slipping everywhere. And there's lots of pool shoes that you can get these days if that is the case. But again, it's just something you need to know before you go. And if they've got a platform, if you want to do sitting work, have they got jets? If they've got strong jets, that can really have a negative impact unless you're working to resistance against them. What spaces are both in and out of the pool, and the age and size of the person that's going in, and is it safe? And then just ensuring that there's a way of getting out of the pool if you did have an emergency. So, you know, if you do have seizures, or you're supporting someone who has seizures, for example, or unpredictable behaviours, whereby there could potentially be an accident or an incident in the water, you know, is everything in place that you could get them out safely and give them the support and help that they would need? So just a few pictures to finish off with of our pool. So when I'm talking about the hoisting and having the shower trolley that goes up and down, and that goes straight through into the pool, or if you can stand transfer, and if there's anyone here that's an OT, they'll probably be horrified by this picture, but basically I just put something to hold on to everywhere I could find a bit of wall space, in the hope that anyone will be able to use that room if none of the other rooms suited. That's the chair hoist, in case you haven't seen one before. There are also things called a pool pod, where you can transfer into a chair that goes into the pool, which is a little bit like a wheelchair, which gives a bit more support than these ones, and then it lowers in and out. Is the ramp access to the front of the building? That's also really important. And then turning space, so that you can get from your vehicle through into the pool. Once you're in the pool area, are there automatic doors? Are there press button doors? Are they heavy fire doors that you need to push open? Are the corridors wide enough? for a carer maybe to walk alongside somebody who's in a chair, or if you've got power mobility and you don't drive particularly straight, for you to be able to manage to get through, or for walking aids. That's just to demonstrate, just to show if you do need to evacuate, one of the ways that you can evacuate if somebody isn't going to use a hoistling, and there's lots of reasons why you wouldn't in an emergency, that you can have a bed that just goes in and out. And then I thought I would just show my latest bit of pride. So the very last bit of our project was to have a multi-sensory garden, and we finally managed to get that very recently. You can't see the whole picture because that's all we've taken at the moment. And our very last addition was some benches where you can wheel a wheelchair in at the side. And one of the key reasons for that was because we had lots of carers coming who would stand in the parking spaces eating their lunch because they weren't given a proper lunch break. And also if people arrived early, there wasn't anywhere for them to go, particularly if it was a hot sunny day. So we've put that in so that they can also have something either relaxed, obviously not when it's chucking it down with rain, as it is today, but in the summer, somewhere that's nice and relaxing to help with the whole experience. And that's me. I hope that was what you were expecting. I tried not to use lots of jargon, and I hope I covered the areas that you wanted me to cover, but any questions?
Thank you very much, Heather. That was very, very interesting and very informative, I think. So thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we can open up. So would anyone like to ask Heather any questions? I'll just stop your share.
Thank you.
Sure.
You've really sold it. I really want to try it.
Good. That's it. I've achieved my goal today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the idea of being in that warm water and in deep warm water. That'd be amazing. Because I certainly understand the benefits of the weightlessness you feel in water. It's just being a normal pool, but of course it's so cold. I sort of go into a sort of shock, if you like, going into the cold. So to go into really warm water would be wonderful. Has anyone else tried this, guys?
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I get to do it myself, you see. I never suffer with any aches or pains or strains.
So, Natalie, you tried it, haven't you?
Yeah, I had it at Heartlands Hospital. They've got like a pool. It's like the neurophysios, and there was a couple that they could do that, and I used to get hoisted in and have I think I had like a big neck collar on and then some other flows, and I'm sure it was called seaweeding or something like that. And
yeah, that's when you take someone side to side like that and mobilize them.
That's it. They held me at the top end, I think, and they used to move me like that. But I loved it because it just has been really nice, really warm. But yeah, you used to go down a like a corridor as if you were going onto a ward, and then it was like the pool, and it was like it was just really nice in there.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And Heather, I can see how much preparation goes into it, because of course, as you said, it's not just about this session. You have to think about before and after and the benefits of the session.
So is it available on the NHS, or is it a private
in some
thing?
places
Do you have to get referred? How does it work?
Yeah, in some places it is. I mean, unfortunately, and I hate to go on about COVID, but we lost so many pools during COVID. I think we were the only crazy people that actually opened one in COVID. But unfortunately, I think, because of COVID and because of sort of rising heating costs and energy costs, it's really quite hard for them to keep the affordability of it. But there are still some, I mean, for example, near to myself, we've got Croydon, there's a pool at Mayday Hospital. Some services you are able to get your funding through your CCGs. I've got a few people that come through that have fought quite hard for it, but have managed to get some funding. So they're using a private facility, but it's being paid for through health. And I've got some children.
Would CHC fund that then?
Yeah. I've not been. I don't get involved with any of the fighting for the funding, but yeah, we have usually only a block, so it might be to come for sort of 6 weeks. Although having said that, I've got a young lady at the moment. I don't know how she's fostered, and I don't know how her foster mum has managed to do it, but she actually each year I have to, or 6 months probably, I have to write a report to say why it's critical for her to continue. And each time I think they're going to say no, but actually they've continued to fund her. Now she's only 23, so how long that will continue, I don't know. But we've put forward all the benefits in terms of her not being able to exercise, and I quote things like World Health Organization recommendations for physical activity for health and well-being, and that people aren't able to exercise, they're not able to meet those recommendations, and then all the negative effects of not being able to exercise. I always put that in, but for some people it's about being able to maintain a certain level of independence, which then saves the health service money. Or if you're helping to ease pain and stiffness and reduce medications, all of those things are helping to have a knock-on effect, but you have to be able to obviously evidence it and prove it as best you can with what's out there. And that's always the challenge, I think. When you've just had your injury, then depending where you are, you often will get it on the NHS, but it's the kind of afterwards. But again, I'm seeing somebody who they're not good. He comes to me privately and pays privately, but he's just been told, now he's got a spinal cord injury, so slightly different, but he's just been told that they're going to pay for him to go and have some further rehab because he's making such good progress, and he's going to go and have hydro over at Stoke. So
interesting.
It is a real hard fight. I see the stress it causes families and extended families trying to get the funding, but in some cases it does happen. And I say there are some services. I mean, what we tried to do was set up like a self-management session, so that as long as you can get in and out of the pool and you don't need the support of the physio, we have people that come and they'll access the pool, sort of a maximum of 4 people in the pool at one time. And they have their own programs that they then carry out. And that's one way of keeping the costs down as well. So also, you know, in your areas, it's worth looking to see. I mean, I did that as an initiative to try and keep costs down for people, but, you know, you hopefully might find other places as well that might do something like that or something similar. Or you might say to them, would you consider doing it? There's a few of us would like to use the facility.
Heather, is there a website that we can go to find our local facilities?
That is a work in progress. Swim England.
What was that? Swim England?
Swim England are in the process of putting together indexes of pools and what facilities they have. So originally it was purely swimming pools, but now they're starting to look at hydrotherapy pools as well. So we're still having a little bit of a battle with them because they're still saying to us, you have to swim. So for instance, I said, well, we hire ours out to Aquatots on a Saturday, so we do have swimming in there. So that's a little bit of a battle still, but we are definitely getting there. Definitely getting there.
Thank you, Heather. I know Adrian has got his hand up, so you'd like to say something, Adrian?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. First, the very first case in the world to go before the UN Disability Committee was MH versus Sweden, popularly known as the Swedish Whirlpool case, which Sweden got comprehensively done because they were denying planning permission for somebody to put in a therapeutic whirlpool on grounds that it was you know, kind of conservation area and a kind of greenbelt equivalent, and they're told, well, no, you can't deny it on those grounds, you have to do it and revise your laws. And that was mainly under Article 26 of the UN Disability Convention, which is about comprehensive habilitation and rehabilitation. So I was wondering what, you know, arguments you're using in terms of funding and whether you're using that case.
As I say, I don't do the arguing for funding, so I don't know whether those who are, I'm more the person that's at the end. And if you want me to provide information about what the actual benefits are going to be or have been. So if you have maybe come and had a few sessions and then you're trying to get funding for further sessions, that's usually where my involvement comes in. My only arguments were with our local council, who told us that hydro pool wasn't a community, what do they call it?
Oh my word!
A community value asset. But apparently
that would definitely be against MH versus Sweden.
I know. And then we had a big fight with them over the ramp because they didn't like the look of it.
Yeah.
I actually threatened to take legal action against our local council.
Well, okay. And the other kind of curiosities are, you mentioned the temperatures, like in all, I think you said it's 28, 29. And then what was the teaching pool?
A lot of teaching pools are more sort of 30, 31. They tend to be a little bit warmer.
Yeah, and then there's the you're at 33, 34.
Most of them run at 33, 34. Some will run at 32. It depends on the person who's going into the pool. If they've got really high muscle tone, it's quite a difference at 32. And I have to say, even when our pool normally runs at 34, and when it did drop to 33, quite a few of my clients were saying to me, "Oh, it's not as nice today," even though it was 33.
Right. So people are really quite sensitive to just. It didn't seem that much, but I guess it's a total of 5 degrees, and even 28, 29 seems quite,
because
quite warm.
Particularly if you can't generate your own body heat.
Yeah.
And when I teach, so usually when I teach in hydrotherapy pools, but when I taught the masters for aquatic therapy and neurology, we did it at Hertfordshire University, and that was normal bog standard swimming pool. And to stand to teach people, I was freezing because I wasn't moving, because I was standing telling people and demonstrating what to do. And that I actually felt quite ill by the end of it, to be honest.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that's because I'm a northerner, but
Thank you, Adrian, for
well,
those.
I would thought if you're northern, you'd be more used to colder temperatures.
Anyway. No, but I've moved to the south, so I've turned into a softie.
And the other thing, men and women are said to walk slightly differently. So are there any differences that need to be applied to these therapies, when you're dealing with a man or when you're dealing with a woman and that sort of thing?
Sorry, I didn't catch the first part of the sentence. Would you mind repeating?
Apparently men and women walk slightly differently, the kind of actual physical process I read somewhere. And so are there any differences that you need to observe when you're dealing with a male client or when you're dealing with a female client in terms of getting their bodies to kind of function properly again?
Yes, in lots of different ways. And to be honest, generically, each person's individual, and no two people tend to have the exact same walk or movement. And the main thing, obviously, with ladies is our body composition tends to be different, which affects how well we do or don't float, which is one of the key factors. And the other factor is that we generally tend to have slightly wider pelvises. So our angle from our pelvis down to our knees is greater than it is in men. So again, if you've had a brain injury, that can have an impact in terms of your muscle pull. So as you would out of the water, you would consider that when you're in the water, but thinking about the properties at the same time. But buoyancy and not being lifted. So sometimes I will actually put weights onto people's ankles when they're in the water to help them almost counteract the buoyant effect, as in they don't lift off their feet, but still have the buoyant effect for helping with all the other aspects of what we're working towards, just to help them feel a little bit more stable.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Adrian. And once again, thank you very much, Heather. That was very, very interesting.
Yeah,
thank you very much for taking the time.
The pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, it's been
Thank
really
you.
interesting. Thanks, Heather. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Bye bye.